And as you might have guessed from the name of the video, today we are going to try some new art supplies I've got. And if you're watching without subscription and you like my videos, please consider subscribing, it will brighten my day. And so, let's begin. And here's the first hero of the occasion. A watercolor sketchbook with 100% cotton paper, cold pressed and fine grain. I got this one for my birthday from my cousin and I'm so in love with the color of the cover. And I think the design in general is beautiful and immediately attracts the eye. The sketchbook's price may vary from 8 to 11 euros. The second new supply arrived to me from the brand Artify. It's a 12-piece nylon brush set made for various techniques like watercolor, acrylic, oil and gouache. Inside of the box you can find many brush shapes and sizes to your likes. And I like that inside we get some information about how to take care of the brushes. You can see I already used one here because I wasn't patient, and I'm curious to try all the others today. The price of the brush set on the official website is around 13 euro or $14, which in my opinion is a very nice price for so many brushes. Hopefully the quality will be good as well. We'll get to that soon. And finally, the last bits I got myself when I had a tour in a local Royal Talents Center in Apeldoorn. These are just a few new watercolor half pens from a brand Van Gogh. I already had this small set from this brand and I really enjoyed the paint quality. I only missed a few other colors I like to use. The paper has just a slightly yellow tone and a fine grain, just as described on the cover. The paper is thick enough, so I think it will be comfortable to paint on it. And I noticed that the back side of the paper has a way smoother texture. And watercolor pens I got had a new and old designs. The old way you would unwrap the paint like a candy, and I can't tell how satisfying it feels. Though all the information about the paint stays on that little piece, so you might want to store it. On the new pens you only remove the top paper and you will still have some information on the sides, which I think is more practical. Now, talking about the brush set, I was quite intrigued when I first saw it. The brushes looked familiar, but still different. I was glad to see the flat brush here, and was curious to try the cat tongue brush for the first time. Most of the brushes in this set have a similar round shape, which I usually use in my paintings. But in this set, they all have extra long toe, which felt new to me. Here you can see the difference between the brush from the set and the brush type I normally use. They look similar, but the toe actually makes a huge difference when you paint. My personal favorites in this set were the big flat brush and a very small liner. The flat one can be used to create beautiful fills, and I like its look on dry technique. By the way, on my Patreon I have a post where I was sketching my dreams with ink, and there I experimented with dry techniques. And then I was also impressed by the abilities of flat brushes. They give so much space to play with a line. Overall, I like the ability of these brushes from Artify to create thin lines, even if you use the biggest ones. Although, I felt like the round brushes gave me kind of the same result. But it's too early to draw conclusions, so I will tell you more about my experience with these brushes a little later. And now let's talk about the paper and paints. The pages of the sketchbook are double-sided. The back side, where I start painting now, is way smoother than the right front one. I also want to test my paints abilities on this paper, so I start to experiment with Van Gogh brand. I make a color wheel to test how well the palette mix new colors. I like these mixes. The red in combination with yellow creates a perfect orange. The yellow and ultramarine gives a nice green as well. But I'm not a big fan of the mix with ultramarine and red because the purple turned out very dirty, more like brownish, greenish, I don't know. I think maybe I could get a better result with cobalt, maybe, but it's just my guess. With all the new colors, I could get a beautiful gradient. The paints give clean and vibrant colors. But again, when layering the colors, I wasn't so happy with the result. The tones I got looked too dirty to me. Trying to touch colors with a wet on dry technique, I saw that the paint doesn't want to mix as much. A bit of the same situation I got with a wet on wet technique, which I think gives some control of the paint. The colors mix nicely if you help them a bit. And on the right side, I will test a Sonnet watercolor, which I bought so long ago. It can be 10 years now. I'm actually impressed I still have it. It lasts so long. Comparing these two, I was surprised how more bright the Sonnet watercolor is. I felt like it has so much more pigment in it. But now looking at it again, I think maybe the back of the sketchbook's page eats up the color a bit more. Could that be? I will definitely check the theory when I paint again. The color wheel looks good with both brands to me, but I think Sonnet watercolor gives a better result between the red and blue. And in general, paint layering I like way more with the Sonnet paint. It creates a more clean between color result. When using wet technique, I noticed that these two brands behave very differently. With Van Gogh, I felt like I can control the paints better, when Sonnet colors were sometimes unpredictable. And here is a moment of Kiki fighting for the water. She wanted to drink it so badly, as always. Here you can see layering of the sonnet colors. I think the result looks so much better, and between colors turn out more clean. When lifting color, Van Gogh brand showed itself to be more successful. I guess it could depend on the paper side more than on the paint. I honestly don't know for sure. If you have more experience with these things, feel free to share in the comments, please. And here's how the spread looks like. It was fun to play with the colors and to warm up my feel for watercolor a bit. And now let's create something. Every day I feel the arrival of autumn more and more. With more cold, fresh winds and morning fog, my favorite smell of fallen polo leaves, colorful trees decorating the streets, and crows circling daily in the sunset light. To capture these feelings, I decided to paint an autumn-themed portrait. For a reference, I use pictures of my friends who I associate with this season as well. As any illustration I make, the process has 3 steps: pencil sketch, paint coloring, and then colored pencil details finish. Talking about painting, in the process of working on an actual piece, I figured out that the brushes don't fit my personal needs. It may sound strange, but I struggle to work on small details with them, despite the thin toe. Make a beautiful thin line? Yes. But to fill a small area with paint is a bit of a challenge. Like for example, these small leaves and berries I had to paint there. What I think this set would be perfect for is botanical painting and maybe some decorative painting. For example, you could create gorgeous flower petals with these brushes and add finer line details there. Also, my opinion is based on my experience with these brushes in watercolor technique, the one that I use, and perhaps they behave somewhat differently if you paint with acrylic or gouache. And while I paint, I have a small story to tell. It's not a coincidence that I ended up next to this sketchbook. I have always been painting on pulp paper and barely have experience with cotton until this summer, when I found a bunch of paper pieces that I got from a friend. It was just a pack of all sorts of different brands, leftovers from an art shop. And one of the papers stood out to me. It had large grain and I thought watercolor behaved weird on it. Very different than what I'm used to, so I didn't enjoy it much, but I was still curious. And after some research I found out that it was a Fabriano paper piece and it was cotton. I'm not sure how many percent anymore. After that, I dived into videos about paper reviews and how different paper types are made and how to work with them. I learned about cold and hot pressed paper. Should I tell that it just blew my mind? Anyway, after hearing so many artists praising the cotton paper, I thought I have to give it another try. But maybe with a finer grain because I paint detailed illustrations. In general, it is way more pleasant to work for me on this sketchbook's paper than the one I had from Fabriano, just because of the fine grain. I'm also curious to try hot-pressed cotton paper in the future to see if it's something for me. And on what paper do you prefer to paint? And what are your favorite techniques? I would love to chat about it in the comments. And now I hope you will enjoy the painting process with some music, and if you like my videos, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next ones. And have a beautiful day! you.